And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
And joining us tonight is a man who knows just as much about lube as he does shotguns, maybe just a little bit more, Ashton Ray. Ashton, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, great to be here, guys.
Yeah, so Ashton, real quick, before we jump into tonight's topic, which is clearly all about lube, guys, you might as well start a drinking game now because we're probably going to say that word more times than your liver can handle. So it's coronavirus season. Why not? Let's enjoy it while we can. So Ashton, real quick. So for the folks at home, why don't you go ahead and explain some of your background and how you got to know so much about lube?
Okay. Well, knowing stuff about guns doesn't really, knowing gun instructor stuff isn't really where this comes from. This comes from more of my day job and my pedigree prior to that and everything else. So back in the early 90s, I was in the United States Navy. I was a Navy nuke. I was a mechanical type of machinist mate, and I was on a guided missile cruiser, the USS Truxtun. And as part of my duties there, that was really where I started to do and became interested in taking lubricating oil samples and evaluating them. And they were pretty rudimentary things that we did there. You don't really have a lot of gear, but that was where I really became interested and became involved with purification of oil and cleaning it and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just the farmer kind of stuff that I did growing up, changing oil in cars and tractors and trucks and what have you. Fast forward later in my career, it kind of became an area of independent study for me. And then back, I ended up through my day job, which I have been now for the last 22 years, driving reactors commercially, making electricity instead of pushing ships through the water. I had the opportunity to go and sit for the CLS exam, the Certified Lubrication Specialist exam. That's you test with the STLE, the Society of Tribologists and Lubrication Engineers. So I went and did a 3-day brush up prep course for that, and read a bunch of books and did a whole bunch of more independent study because there's a whole lot to it. It's a lot. I found out getting ready for that exam that there was a ton more stuff involved with this than just the oil you put in stuff. Right, there was a whole litany of things associated with cutting fluids and greases and stuff for rotary compressors and stuff for, a whole bunch of different stuff that I didn't realize was underneath that umbrella. So it took me a while to get buffed up to the point where I was confident enough to go sit for the exam. And fortunately, I passed. So now that I have the letter CLS behind my name, right? So, in my regular job, I look at oil analyses. I evaluate those. I make recommendations as far as what I spec out different lubricants and all that kind of stuff. It's not my primary job. It's not my all day every day, but it's a part of what I do. So it's more of a secondary. It's one of my many jobs that you have when you have a job, right?
Right.
So, as far as that goes, that's really where my chops come from and my ability to say something remotely intelligent or reasonable about this topic.
So interestingly enough, I'm aware, it's funny, I invited you on to do this, and you mentioned you had just been on PNS talking about similar topics. For total fairness and clarity, like I'm still catching up on PNS stuff, so I haven't, because y'all are bow to the masters of getting out, like, holy crap, you're getting some stuff out. And even in quarantine, like 5 hours at a time is a lot for me to digest. So I'm working on it on the reload and press. But this idea wasn't born of that, nor did we hear. Like, I have no idea what you guys talked about. I suspect in a group environment like that, and Cherry Bombs and all those dudes were probably on there. I'm a little more interested in just getting a rudimentary understanding of the different use cases for lubricants and why it matters what you put on your gun. Because my knowledge base is basically wet gun run, dry gun don't, right? Like, that's about what I...
That's a really great place to start, though. Honestly, you're halfway there. I mean,
cool.
So, when it comes to guns, they're not a particularly difficult lubrication problem to solve. They're really not. They're actually a pretty simple lubrication problem. So what you need is it needs to be there, and it needs to be up to the task. Well, because the task isn't all that challenging in most cases, it needs to be there. Now, what does that mean? What is a good lube versus a less optimal kind of lube kind of thing? So some of the things that you can do wrong. Let's start with that, right? Some of the things that you can do wrong, you can put stuff in there that you don't want there. You can put lubricants that have the additives in them that aren't ideal. Say, for instance, additives with a chlorine component to them can cause chloride stress crack corrosion, which means that the chlorine will get on your metal. A lot of times it's stainless steel and whatever steels, and whenever you apply stress, it'll crack. So we don't want that. And there are and have been lubes out there that has, that's the case. There are. So take a look at your ingredients and your MSDS and that sort of thing before you make, in my opinion, what would be a mistake in putting something on there like that.
No, let me interrupt you real quick, Ashley, because I know there's going to be people that hear that and they're going to say, how much chlorine has to be in oil or in a lubricant, and how much of that does it really need to get onto the surface in order to cause those cracks and fissures? So like, is a drop or two of this stuff going to do it, or like how much time are we talking about?
That, I can't really give you chapter and verse on this many parts per million per this amount of time with this much force and so forth. What I can tell you is that time's a part of it, right? The longer it's applied, all that kind of stuff. And there's no real benefit to it.
Right.
So just don't is the answer.
No, that's
right?
fair. Yeah, but hey, look, you're talking to a guy that's a hobbyist knife maker. I have seen steel shatter and crack in some of the most awkward ways possible.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, it's not beyond the realm of the possible, but we got to get ahead of those naysayers out there that want to be like, oh, it's just a drop or two every day for the next 10 years that we own this gun,
Okay. It's your gun, bro. I don't care. Right. Yeah, that's
a great answer.
I mean, I'm not here selling something.
This is why you fit in so well with us, buddy.
So I mean, it's not that big a deal to me. You're not putting it on my gun. Then there's electrolytics that can allow different types of metals to become electrically coupled, right? So graphites and a bunch of other stuff. Chlorine will do it too, which will cause galvanic corrosion, right? So galvanic corrosion can also cause cracking in some cases, but galvanic corrosion turns into more of a surface rust kind of thing, and it's accelerated by that. So, like for instance, it'll oxidize, like in the condenser, in your hot water tank, right? In your hot water tank, you have people call it a zinc. It's not always zinc. Sometimes it's magnesium, whatever. But it's a sacrificial anode, right? So
correct.
Those negatively charged ions will go jump on that, and they'll eat that instead of attacking the metal of the tank itself and making the tank rust. So that's why you need to go in and change that out every year or two to make sure there's something there, so your tank doesn't rust and get a hole in it. Same thing can happen on your gun, except you don't have a sacrificial anode. So those negatively charged guys will go jump on that and cause corrosion that way. And then the other stuff can be like bad for you, like if you have Teflon You get Teflon up. I forget what the temperature is. Maybe it's 320 degrees, something like that. I forget. I have to look it up. But there's some temperature at which you get Teflon above that, it'll start to off gas nasty things that you don't want to be breathing. It can hurt you. Those kind of things you want to avoid. So, gun lubes there's a lot of different ones out there. And one of the most important pieces is what kind of base stock is being used. And this is also one of the hardest things to figure out, to be perfectly honest with you, because they just don't advertise this stuff. But there are 4 groups, right? Group 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, there's 5. There's more than 5. There's a 2A, whatever. But call it 5 big groups of base stocks. And one is, moderately refined oil, not really used much in common applications anymore. Group 2 would be your cheaper engine oils and stuff like that. Group 3 is a hydroisomerized or a hydrocracked oil it's a petroleum-based product that is really, really refined. It's really, really clean. It's got less dinosaur guts and rocks in it than any other kind of petroleum oil that you're going to be able to get your hands on. And that is most of what you see the synthetic oils advertised are actually group 3s. And that was a lawsuit that was won by Castrol, I believe. I think back in the day, maybe 20 years ago now, something like that. Maybe, yeah, somewhere around that time frame, maybe a little longer. Castrol came out with a so the story goes anyway. Castrol came out with some product and they called it synthetic, and there was challenges to their ability to do that legally, and there was a ruling that said no, you can do it. You're just advertising it, so you're not trying to you're not making an actual chemical claim. This is not a legal dissertation or anything like that. This is just broad strokes of sort of what happened. So when that happened, they were able to use a group 3 base stock and call it synthetic. And if you're old enough, I don't know if you guys are or not, or if you're into that sort of thing, at that time, there were very few synthetic oils on the market for automobiles, and they were extremely expensive. So you had your Mobil 1s out there, and you had some of the boutique lubricants out there that were hard to find, or whatever, like your AMSOILs and what have you. Well, then, basically overnight, everybody and their dog had a synthetic lube a synthetic oil on the market for your car, and they were all $2 or $3 cheaper than Mobil 1. Well, that's because they were using cheaper constituents. They were using cheaper products to start with. The base stock was cheaper. A full, actual, real synthetic is a PAO, Group 4, and that's a grown molecule. So the difference is those long chain hydrocarbons are all similarly sized, and they're basically, by design, you can pick what you want to do, and that sets the weight of your base stock. And then you have to adjust. You have to use less viscosity improvers or whatever to move that weight around, that viscosity around, so that you get the performance you're looking for that application. So Group 4 is a really, really good lubricant. Group 5 is esters and everything else, basically, that it doesn't fall in the groups 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a lot of those have really, really good properties as base stock, but sometimes they don't take to additive packages as well. And they're not used nearly as much in stuff that you're used to seeing. They're in very specific applications. Some superchargers run them. They're used in they're used as a base stock that doesn't react with a certain chemical that it's exposed to, or whatever, if in some kind of process technology application. But so Group 1, 2, 3, and 4 is what you're usually going to see. In Group 1, you see less and less as years go by. So that base stock kind of sets the envelope of how well your overall product can perform. It's what bounds your performance level. So the higher it is, up through 4, as I would say, is gonna set your high bar as to how good it can be in broad sense. This is kitchen physics and kitchen chemistry here. We're not
Hey,
not
we're
trying
all
to be
we're kitchen gunsmiths, so it fits in perfectly, I think.
right. This is like the Wile E. Coyote school of tribology here. This is not, so, the base stock quality has a lot to do with how well a lubricant can perform. And then, the additive package, you push it around with different additives that do different things. And, it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. You get one aspect of the performance up, and then you have to adjust it to maintain performance in another aspect, and so on and so forth. But, it's like I said, guns just aren't that hard to lubricate. It's just a matter of how often you have to do it, and what does it leave behind when it goes away. So that's where some grandpappy's gun oil, that was the tried and true gun oil from 1920 kind of thing. You guys have probably seen, I'm sure, you pick up a gun that used to have that oil on it, and now it's got this sludgy, sticky, varnishy stuff left laying around. And there's some more modern products that
It's
can
like
do that
Cosmoline,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, it turns into sticky nastiness that you gotta tear out of there and clean out and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to have that. You want to try and avoid that. So your better lubricants do a better job at not leaving those residues behind. They deal with time a little better. Some of the non-toxic stuff, that's a big deal for some folks. The non-toxic stuff, it has a tendency sometimes to actually basically turn rancid because it's kind of made out of bug food. So it'll get eaten up, and it can do weird things. And there's products out there that people like to talk about. And I'm not going to talk smack on individual products. I'm not doing that. No. But I'm not calling people out by name. I'm not here to do that. But oftentimes, if you hear stories about a lubricant doing that from a bunch of different people, then it's probably true. And you should, that doesn't mean the lubricant doesn't work. It just means you can't leave it sit there for whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 years, before you do something with it, right?
Yeah.
So
not something you want to lightly coat all over your gun before you stick the safe queen away until next 4th of July when you take it out.
Yeah, that's not what you want to use. I mean, There are products specifically for that, right? One of the ones I use is, I forget what it's called, Barrier or something. I don't know.
No, that sounds right.
Barricade. Barricade.
Yeah, I was about to say a Birchwood Casey product, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. Brought to you by Birchwood Casey. But that's
shit, we wish.
Yeah, right. Hey guys, give us a call.
But, let's get some of that Birchwood Casey money.
But yeah, I mean, there's products that are kind of purpose built to do certain things, and usually they're decent at it. So one of the ways that you want to look at this is, what is my expected duty cycle? How long do I need this thing to, how long do I expect time-wise to not want to touch this thing between applications and service, basically? And then 2, how many rounds do I expect to get out of this thing under hard use? I can tell you that most lubricants are gonna get you through a 2,000 round weekend. They really are. If you put some on Saturday morning, and at lunchtime you put a little more on, and then Sunday morning you put some on, and then Sunday at lunchtime you put some on, you can get away with using just about any kind of gun lube you want, really, except for, like I said, some of the Grandpappy's gun lube stuff that you can actually see it burning off when you start to shoot a lot. You can actually see it going away. So anything that's modern and relatively well designed is going to stand up pretty well, especially for a pistol. Especially pistols are really pretty easy. They just don't get that hot. Shotguns too. They're pretty forgiving, honestly, from a lubrication standpoint. ARs are probably a little more challenging than those two platforms. There, I said it, the word platform. But
you said moron a few minutes ago too.
I did. I repeated it just to make sure. But so the AR, it gets hotter, so you're going to want to have something that's going to stand up to that heat a little better. And but there again, it's pretty obvious if you're using an oil, you can see when you need to put some on, right? When you need to add more, you can see it. And one of the things that I like about, and now we'll step into the grease versus oil thing. One of the nice things about oil is it's easy to reapply, and it really doesn't require you to take the gun apart or anything like that to do it. And it's quick. It can be carried around with you pretty easily. You don't have to have any sort of stuff with you to do that. You just carry a little thing this big and a little bit of oil on, you're down the road. From an instructor standpoint, I like it because heck, you can pretty much do it in the holster. You can do a pretty good job in a holster, especially like a competition holster that has like the ejection port cutaway. But you can still get it done in something like an ALS if you're using a Safariland with retention and stuff. You just run the back rails and let it run down inside, and you should be all right. You get enough in there to keep you going. The idea of using grease, I typically don't recommend greases. The biggest reason for that is that most of the greases that people have available to them or choose to use because they have it is the wrong kind. It's not really a good application for it. There are some gun specific greases out there. Some work better than others. Some of them don't like the cold. What is a grease? A grease is nothing more than an oil with a thickener added to it, right? And it still lubricates the same way as the oil does because that's what it is. It's an oil. It just has an extra component to it, that acts sort of like if you go to any definitions page, talking about lubricants, they're going to tell you that, hey, the oil is just held up in this sponge that's your carrier, typically a metal salt or something like that,
so,
lithium compound or whatever.
So this begs the question. There's often, so I have used both oils and grease. I actually still have a tube of Italian gun grease, believe it or not. As I understand it, they went out of business, which I think is kind of a shame. From what I understand, they were putting out a pretty good product. I don't know. I only have experience with that one vial of gun grease that's lasted me forever. But there is, when we're talking about the difference between oil lubricants and grease, one of the strongest arguments, especially for me as somebody who shoots competition, right, is that the grease doesn't burn off as quickly or dissipate as quickly as oil does. Is that a true statement?
I kind of disagree with that because the oil that you're using, there's an oil in the grease, and it's still susceptible to all the same use/failure mechanisms, whatever you want to call them. It can be consumed. It'll be consumed similarly as an oil without a carrier, without a binder, right? Without that sponge.
Okay.
And it doesn't work. Greases don't work unless the oil creeps out of the binder. So if it stays in its sponge, it's of no use to you. So like the theory of lubrication that we're using here is the hydrodynamic fluid wedge, right? That's a really, really scary word, right? All that means is there's a wedge of a fluid between two solid surfaces with relative motion between them. If you've ever hydroplaned in a car, you've had a hydrodynamic fluid wedge between your tire and the road. Okay, and you'll notice that the friction went away pretty good, right? It was pretty slippery. So the water in that case was your lubricant that was providing the lubrication, and it reduced your friction pretty good because you were hydroplaning. Yeehaw! Here we go. So, the oil has to creep out of the grease's binder for it to work, for it to do that, and that's nice. Saw your comment. So that's going to happen. It's going to be caused. It's going to be caused by shear. It's going to be caused by dynamic shear or whatever. So it's getting pushed on and moved. So the oil is going to come out and it's going to start to do its job. That oil is still susceptible to being burned off by temperature. It's still susceptible to be oxidized. It's still susceptible to all the same things that the oil that you're using without a binder is. The only real advantage that it has is it's got that mechanical stop there. One of the things that I'm not crazy about with grease is that you don't get nearly as much visual feedback on the condition of the lubricant, right? So it can look like it's fine, but it might not be, right? What you're seeing is a binder with very little oil left in it, and it may or may not be able to do its job as effectively as you'd like to. Now, so and by the time it turns to the Mojave Desert and is like that cracked, the oil is completely gone kind of thing, you're kind of past the due date here, So, and one of the other things is that all the lubricant manufacturers have shelf lives, right? Their products have shelf lives, and it's anywhere from 6 months to maybe 18 months or whatever in a sealed container in a cool, dry place, and so on and so forth. And even then, if you open up a tub of grease that you have in your garage, your NLGI2 grease for your wheel bearings or whatever in your tractor, you open it up, there's that oil sheen laying on top, right? Well, that's the oil that's come out of the binder, right? So that happens at rest also. And then that oil does the same thing that any other oil does, because it is the same. It is just any other oil. It's just that it has the same. It's susceptible to the same forces that cause your oil to have problems. So it doesn't really. It just doesn't seem to work much better in my experience.
No, that's fair. That makes perfect sense. We just needed somebody with a 100-pound brain like yours to come on the show and prove to us what we didn't know about lube.
So I'm going to hit you with a couple grandpappy's curls of wisdom things here that you hear about lube and gun cleaning and all that, and you can bat them out of the park. So my favorite, I think, is over lubrication. Is there such a thing?
Theoretically, of course, there is. It can get on your glasses when you're shooting. It can get on your hands. I hear tell that some striker fire guns can be susceptible to some sort of hydraulic lock in the striker in the striker channel. I've never seen it, but I've heard about it. I'd be interested if somebody has actually seen that.
You just knocked another item off my list. Hydraulic lock was the next thing I was going to ask you about.
I've heard about it.
Yeah, me too. Is that nonsense? Or I don't know.
Great White Buffalo. Yeah. Great White Buffalo. I don't know. I've never seen it, and I've seen a few rounds down range. I'm not going to tell you it's crap because I don't have any way to prove that it's crap. So I would never make that statement. I just haven't seen it. Maybe I just haven't seen it yet. It sounds like it could theoretically be a thing, but it would also take a lot.
That's
and,
what. Yeah,
and I don't know how you're going to keep it. How you would keep it there? I'm not saying that it's not a thing. I'm just saying I haven't seen it, and I'd be very interested to talk to somebody that had seen it.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, that little hole in the back of your slide behind the slide cover plate is not a lubrication point. Don't just go.
Well, that part doesn't really need any lubrication.
That's my point.
Yeah. So, yeah,
don't go dumping lube in the back of,
Yeah, put lube where the manufacturer says to put the lube. That's a good plan. They kind of have a handle on it.
I am fighting so hard not to capitalize on what you just said, Kent, but we're going to let it go.
Oh, God.
Try to have a semi-intellectual discussion. This is science. No, this is science.
Hold on. One third of us is having a very intellectual discussion. The other two are just like two bad little kids in the schoolhouse doing everything we can not to dick it up. All right. So, how about manufacturers? And I won't name any because, like a gentleman, you don't want to trash on anybody. How about manufacturers making the claim that you have to use their solvents and their lubricants in conjunction? Because if you don't, they won't play well together and bad things will happen.
That's a possibility.
Okay.
It is a possibility. What I can tell you is that a lot of manufacturers do a very good job of making sure that their lubricants are cross-compatible with other lubricant types. So, there are some that, you don't want to mix certain things together. And there again, following the directions on the stuff that you're using is a pretty good idea. Now, I am going to tell you, I don't buy into the whole pores of the metal thing. That I have to season this like my grandmother's cast iron skillet.
Oh,
I'm not buying that. That's not a thing that I'm sold on. You're going to have trouble selling me on that one.
Every fiber of my being that knows anything about metallurgy just cringed.
Yeah. Okay. So you're on the same page here. Yeah. That's
absolutely.
I'll go out on a limb and say I'd really have to see some proof of that being the case before I would even entertain it as a possibility.
Well, maybe Grandpappy's World War II era cannon or Civil War cannon that he uses for his the reenactments that might be made out of cast iron.
Yeah, it's just just keep going. Just keep looking somewhere else.
Right?
Keep looking somewhere else. Find something else to use. But so yeah, I'm not a big fan of that stuff. If somebody is putting a certain additive, or they use some sort of boutique base stock, it's theoretically possible, that there could be some sort of undesirable thing that happens if you mix it with something else. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Okay, so if I take your answer for the layman, theoretically possible but highly unlikely. Ish.
If somebody's doing that, if somebody's using stuff that you can only use their stuff, I really have to wonder why.
Fair.
I really have to wonder what it is, what kind of secret sauce they got going there.
Okay.
So I tend to want to use things that are going to be cross compatible with other stuff.
All right. So a thing that used to be a reality for me that is no more. My company is named Green Mountain Defense for a reason. I operated like 70 miles south of the Canadian border a lot, and cold was a factor for me for a good 6-7 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Specific special lubricant.
And they called that summer where Kent's from, folks.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So temperature specific lubricant. I mean, I'll just anecdotally tell you that the shit I used up there works down here, and the shit that my daddy taught me to use down here worked up there. So I don't,
Well, I have seen lubricants fail in extreme cold. So I've spent the past couple of decades hunting in the Adirondacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm familiar with it being pretty stinking cold, double digits below zero kind of thing. And yep. I've seen their safeties freeze in position, because of that kind of stuff. I can remember that. LJ, if you're watching, it was you. So yeah, there are lubricants that perform better than others, and they have broader operating envelopes than others. So, I mean, you can find this out if the manufacturer is willing to give it to you. So if you look up what the pour point is, that is an indication. It's a measure of its performance in low temperature. So
what was that word? Core point?
Pour.
Oh, like, pour. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. P-O-U-R.
Correct. Or P-O-O-R if you're a firearms instructor.
That works too.
Yeah, no shit.
But you actually had me second guessing if I spelled it correctly. I'm like, wait, which pour? Bear, barefoot, bear this burden, pour, frog, fraud. I don't know. We could do this all night.
God almighty.
So pour point is a way for you to compare one lubricant to another, right? So if you see a group 2 base stock oil with a pour point, maybe it's got a pour point of like, -10 or -20 degrees, something like that, maybe, whatever. And then you have a group 4 PAO synthetic that has a pour point of like -45 degrees. So you don't have to. It's kind of you don't. I'm not telling you that is a temperature where your gun will work or your gun won't work. What I'm telling you is it's a way to measure one lubricant compared to another and see how well it works in the cold. So the lower that number is, the more negative that number is, the farther down in temperature you can expect it to continue to perform.
So if a company is very, very boisterous about their flash point, but doesn't say shit about pour point, that stuff might not work so good in the cold.
It might not, right?
Yeah.
You just don't know. You only know what they're willing to tell you. You can only so
Yeah.
Some manufacturers give you tons and tons of they give you tons of information, and some give you very little. So it can be difficult. So, but what I will tell you is, in my opinion, the more information that somebody's willing to give you, that's usually kind of a clue, right? If they're willing to give you more information.
Yeah, they're so an analogy comes to mind, like the difference between, let's say, brand X firearm and a SOLGW or a BCM or somebody, where one company's going out of their way to tell you everything there is possibly to be told about their components and where stuff comes from, and the other company's going, it works. Might be a clue. That makes sense.
Right. I mean, if somebody's telling you that their barrel is made from a specific kind of steel, and that they're using, the testing procedure that they're using for their bolts and their bolt carrier groups and all that kind of stuff, if they're actually using a test charge, and then they're actually magnafluxing and doing all that kind of stuff, if they're actually doing that, as opposed to, ours is good, it's kind of a clue. People are going to brag on stuff that's worth bragging about.
Well, and I would even look at it as I wouldn't even use the lack of a company telling you or disclosing, like, let's just say the pour point, for example. I wouldn't use that as an indicator that it's going to perform poorly. What I would use that as is an indicator that they don't truly know.
Oh, I find it hard to believe that they don't know.
Well, granted, right? But
well, I don't know. The more forthright somebody is about their product, the more I would tend to want to trust it. That's all.
I also try to look at somewhat of the brighter side, and I'd rather deal with somebody that was willfully ignorant as opposed to intentionally misleading. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, yeah. That's cool. But I mean, when it comes to what I'm putting on my gun, I don't want either one of them.
Yeah, this is true.
But there again, what are we really getting, right? So, I mean, are we counting angels dancing on the head of a pin here? In a sense, yeah. I think this is one of the most over-analyzed, and there's so much anguish out there about this topic about, what's the best. Well, I don't know. What are your conditions? What do you got going on? How all that. There's a whole bunch of factors, whether they be environmental or duty cycle and rates and all that stuff. But the real question is I don't want to come off as saying what's good enough, but there's some pretty easy answers, right? There's some pretty easy answers to this stuff, and some of it is just buy a good one and move on and worry about something important, right? Go dry fire instead of arguing with people on the internet about your friggin' lube. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a reason we got 30 some episodes deep into the show before we. You mentioned this before, that you were into this stuff, and I wrote it down on the someday when we need some like content, this will be good. And now we're in the Rona, and all these dudes want to learn about stuff. And this has always been one of those things where I haven't put a ton of stock in it, to be candid with you. But it's one of those topics that you want to learn about. And I get asked this, students ask you, like, well, hey, what do I use on my gun? And I'm like, I use this stuff. And, I'm not sales pitching for anybody. Nobody's throwing me kickbacks or anything. I use the stuff I can get and isn't $9 million. And, isn't Super Seal Ninja dangerous, marketed to the hilt, and way more expensive than the rest?
Well, and the reality of the situation is that we do still, amidst the Rona, right? We have a metric ton of new gun owners
Yes,
that
that's true.
still haven't realized that included with all that other stuff in the packaging for their new gun is a manual that describes where and how to lubricate it, or how liberally to lubricate that thing. I think I think we're truly doing them a service by having this conversation to at least let them geek out with us about making an educated decision on what lubrication or what lube they want to put on their gun. Also, read your damn manuals, folks.
So,
I mean,
go ahead, Ash.
so I mean, the short answer is go buy some Slip EWL, go buy Slip 2000 EWL, and go do something more important.
Right.
You know, there's other good ones out there that are just fine, but I mean, I tend to use that one because it's has such a great body of performance. You know, they're like I said, you can argue about what's there's all kind of arguments to be had.
Well, instead, okay, so let's judo flip this a little bit, because I don't want to pitch you into a corner, and certainly you know how we operate on this podcast. We're not going to single out or drop dimes on any one particular product, Taurus. But instead of trying to limit ourselves in the discussion with brand X or brand Y, whatever the case might be. As Anthony Paduano said in the chat, the best is a matter of opinion. So being the subject matter expert that you are with regard to lubricants and the various performance ratings or attributes of good performance, what are certain things that we should look for as consumers for what has good performance?
Well, that's a pretty good question. So my recommendation is, if you're a cold weather shooter, right? If you're shooting in the cold, and when I say cold, I mean cold. Like, I was involved with doing a rifle class here a number of years ago where it was, I forget, 12 or 14 below zero when we started, and it got up to a balmy 5 degrees or something. Guns will have problems there if you're not using a lube that's conducive to running in those kind of conditions, right? And guys that hunt when it's really, really cold know that kind of stuff. So you're looking for a pour point, right? You're looking for a lower pour point. A good low pour point is going to be somewhere in -40, -50, something like that. That's going to give you a really solid low temperature performance. Flash points. So flash point is something that's useful. That's going to tell you, that's going to give you some idea of its high temperature stability. So good flash points are going to be over 400 degrees and something 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit sometimes in good stuff. So that's going to help you out. And that's going to help you out on a gun that's being run hard. It's going to have a lot of heat dumped into it, and it's going to tend to give you some longer duty, longer between maintenance cycles before you add to it again. If they'll give you one of the 4 balls wear tests, you can compare that to the 4 balls wear test is where they put 4 ball bearings in a thing and spin it around and measure the scuffs and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's a standard ASTM test that they do, and it tells you how well stuff lubricates. That's a good one to compare apples to apples with, right? If you can get a hold of that information. And then, like some people, so I've heard a bunch of different claims, and there again, I'm not here to throw rocks at any individual company or anything like that, but some claim to you have this arduous heat involved application process and all that. I don't believe any of that. I think that's not something that I'm interested in using. Other companies, they're really big on extreme pressure additives. Extreme pressure additives are really, really useful in certain applications. They're necessary in certain applications. I haven't seen where guns are one of them, and I haven't had anybody able to convince me of that. What where in the operating cycle of the firearms there where this would be important, and what problem is it?
So can you define that for me?
So an extreme pressure additive, what it does is basically the thing that's going to make most sense to everybody is the differential, your rear end in your car. Okay, so it's raining a little bit, right? And you're driving onto a bridge, and you go across the metal expansion joint there at the beginning of the bridge, where the bridge moves back and forth like this, that metal part, and your tire breaks loose a little bit, starts to slip, so that it speeds up, and then as you move across it, it hits the pavement on the other side. It stops right now. That shock load right there on your gears in your differential, that short duration, extremely high pressure event, that high stress event will squish all the oil out between the teeth of your differential. Right? And what's left is your extreme pressure additive that gives that little bit of cushion in time enough for it to release, so you don't have actual metal to metal contact with no protection in between it. Okay? So that's kind of what an extreme pressure additive does. There's a bunch of different extreme pressure additives out there that do different things in different ways. But suffice it to say, that's where they shine. That's what they're for. Typically, you don't see those in an engine oil because you don't have that. You see that in gear oils, right? Because gears have that. That's one of the big differences between gear oils and engine oils. Gear oils are also, they don't have a pump and a filter usually, right?
Right.
An engine does. So your gear oil's not going to have the same detergent and dispersant package, right? A detergent keeps stuff from plating out on surfaces, and attaching, and the dispersant kind of holds big particles up so that it floats, and then it gets to your filter and gets taken out, and you're good to go down the road. So you don't have a filter, so you don't really need the same additive packages, because you actually in a differential like that's just sort of a splash lubrication kind of thing. Isn't necessarily pumped. Some of them are a little bit, but it's not really germane to this part of the conversation. That you want that stuff to fall out and lay in the bottom. So there's a magnet oftentimes in the bottom to catch the stuff that falls, so that once it falls, it doesn't come back out and go around. So the type of lubrication system, is different. I want to see a low pour point. I want to see a high flash point. I want to see the total acid numbers and the total base numbers and all that stuff. They don't really matter for guns, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't last that long, and you're not worried about it as much. There is, the copper strip corrosion tests and all that kind of stuff that are gonna, tell you how well it's gonna keep the metal protected as long as it's there, and keep it from rusting, all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of different things that you can look at, and if they're not hard individually to compare. Right, if you pull up the spec sheet for one lubricant versus the spec sheet for another lubricant, you can find out a lot. You can really find out a lot. And
so, I want to take a second, because you've mentioned the data quite a bit, right? The spec sheets and all that other stuff. What is a really good resource that people? Because I know I nerd out on this stuff. I am absolutely going to go look for this data once you say it. But what is a good reference, or maybe it's a governing body, a scientific research institute that publishes this data, if not with the manufacturer?
Well, the manufacturer owns their product, right? So there's nobody out there. There's no clearinghouse that's out there testing all of these things for you.
Okay.
Right. So the manufacturer is going to give you their numbers. That's the place to get it, is from the manufacturer.
Okay.
So most are going to have a technical data sheet. At least for the, most should be giving you that information. Some do, some don't. And gun lubes are slightly different than the rest of the lubricant world in that they aren't quite as forthcoming sometimes. They're, again, somebody that's giving you a bunch of information. That's a pretty good indicator that they're they're operating with good faith.
Gotcha. No, that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, you have to get the numbers from the manufacturer, unless you could, if you want to, you can send it off and have some tests done, but it's going to cost you money, right? Lube oil lubricating oil analysis isn't cheap.
Sorry, that $10 bottle of Lube X that I decided to try for my Glocks and ARs this time isn't probably worth the, I would guess, hundreds if not thousands of dollars to actually fund that testing.
Well, it depends on the test, right? Some tests are cheap, but your sample size is probably going to be about the size of the bottle you probably bought.
Right.
So, that's often the case. 4 or 8 ounces, sample size. So
right.
That'll get you a sample done.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's see here. I had a question on can't watch take over. My train just derailed. I had a question that I wanted to ask and I totally lost it.
That's all good. So one more thing I wanted to ask is, being that this is the the end of days, zombie apocalypse, corona, whatever, and my local gun store will never ever open again. Of course, I'm being hyperbolic here, but so let's just say I had to lube something with some shit I had laying around my house. I run out of my SLP EWL, or I run out of my CLP or whatever I'm using. I've seen my old man and I've seen Grandpappy go spraying guns with everything from WD-40 to frickin' engine oil to bearing grease. We just talked about all these things. Is there something that a guy's likely to have, chain lubricant, whatever? Is there something that's likely to be in my garage as a red-blooded American male that can double as a gun lube if I need it to?
If you have to, my opinion is if you have synthetic engine oil for a motorcycle or for a car or for whatever, a diesel truck, it doesn't really matter that much. That'll get you by in a pinch. It'll be fine and it'll probably perform reasonably well. That's not that big a deal. So the idea of toxicity. I see Anthony says he had a question here.
Yeah, different. Yeah. So Anthony asks, different lube for different weather or region.
So wait, before that, he said, isn't the best a matter of opinion? Well, no, the best is a matter of application. So what is it that you're trying to get it to do? Right. So what's the best for me with what I'm doing with my stuff may not be the best for Kent, because he might be doing something that has a different, he has a different necessity, a different set of needs than what I have. The guy that's shooting at Camp Perry, and he's doing this deal. Yeah, he's doing that, and he shoots, and he's shooting that one perfect shot, and then he's got enough time to make a sandwich between the next time he shoots again and all that kind of stuff. As opposed to, a dude at, USPSA Nationals running PCC, their needs are a little different here.
Right.
So, it's more a horse for the course, as opposed to this one's the best. There really is there's no best. There's just something that fits the circumstances most accurately.
So it based on circumstances.
Yeah, it's based on mission drives the gear again. Same thing over and over. And then different lubes for different weather or region. So weather, that's an interesting thing. People like to talk about the M1 Garand having grease spec'd back in the day for its lubrication. That was based on I forget, what is it, a MIL-G 4006 or something, 1006. I forget what it was. There's an old spec that they said you have to meet this spec for water washout. That gun's kind of got when the bolt's open, it's kind of got a bucket in the top, right? And all the water goes right straight down into the action out of this guy. And they were washing oil out of it like crazy whenever they were doing their water washout test based on their criteria that they set forth in that spec. And grease was about the only thing that could pass it. So that's why they were using grease with that. Other guns don't have that same design. And you'll notice that the military doesn't spec grease on M4s or whatever anymore either. Yeah, they're using CLP or whatever they're using now. But they've gone away from the greases because they just don't hold up as well. They don't perform as well under this broader condition.
Okay.
So I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. So my brother actually has a M1 Grand and an M1A, and we were just talking because I'm not intimately familiar with the M1 Grand, and not to the degree of anybody that's owned one. I've certainly shot them before, but down to an operator level of maintenance, it's foreign to me. And he was kind of educating me on it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, if you ever want to borrow this gun or whatever, just make sure that you lubricate it properly. And do you know what kind of lubricant it takes?" And he was talking about this specific grease that was spec'd out for that platform. I was like, "Oh, no shit. You just gave me some background on that. So thank you for that, Ashton."
Yeah, it's really important that you use that grease if you're going to try and get it to run in a monsoon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you borrow your brother's gun to be a roof Korean in a hurricane,
make sure you use the right grease.
Hey,
make sure you use the right grease.
You never know. It is Tennessee. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
Right.
I guess you'd be a roof ginger, I guess.
That I would. A roof ginger gorilla.
I like it. So
you get to pick the variants of the spelling of gorilla, but I did remember my question. So,
good.
Ashton, we did talk, and I think this is an important one. So buckle up. This is going to be fun. So, Ashton, you did mention, at least in passing, the M4 or the AR-15 platform. Is there an echo in here?
Weapon system.
Yeah, so with that, of course, we know that the star chambers and the bolt carrier group and the firing pin are really well known for being caked with carbon, right? You break out the scraper or whatever kind of fancy whiz-bang tool that you saw at the NRA show, and you're scraping carbon off of these things whenever you're doing a thorough deep cleaning inside these guns. Is there?
When you say you don't mean me, right?
No, I mean the royal you, right?
Okay, because I ain't scraping.
Yeah. Me. I mean me. It's all about me. Anyway, but no, so when
because some drill sergeant made you so unhappy in your time in the service that you just have to give your rifle a fucking white glove going over, or what?
Oh no, dude! I'll break out the brake. What they don't know is I always kept a case of dechlorinated brake cleaner in the bed of my truck, and that shit will blast those star chambers squeaky clean. I would not necessarily go to it for every time I clean my gun, but what I'm curious about is there a product that does maybe it's one of the additives, right? That does a really good job in actually penetrating into carbon buildup and breaking it away from those hard to reach places.
As far as the cleaning stuff goes, I mean, look, I just, that's a hard one, man. It really is. Right. There's so many variables, and formulations change all the time.
Right.
The stuff that you buy today is not the same stuff, even if it has the same label, it's not the same stuff with the same label as 10 years ago.
Right.
Or 15 years ago. Because there was stuff in the stuff we used to buy and stuff that you can't use anymore. The formulations change very often. So that's really difficult to keep up with. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't get wrapped up about cleaning products that much at all because it's just not that important to me.
You never got yelled at for your star chamber not being squeaky clean and white glove inspection ready. Oh, wait, maybe. Well, no, you were Navy. That might have happened. There's a 50-50 chance that could have happened to you. You guys know what a rifle is, right?
Oh, my God. Come on.
No, dude, they've got what was it? 16-inch guns or whatever the hell they call them? Tomahawks, Patriots, all this other fancy shit.
Yeah, harpoons and sea whiz and all that stuff.
Oh, dude, don't get me started on those.
Last time somebody inspected my star chamber, he put on a glove and made me cough.
So what lubricant did he use?
I think he spit on it.
You knew damn well.
It
was going to boil. This conversation was going to degrade into middle school-esque, dare I say sophomoric adolescent behavior.
I was good till you said Star Chamber, and I just never mind. It's fine. It's fine. I'm sorry. We see. This is why we can't have nice things. We bring on the professionals. They know all the things, and at some point, we just show our ass, and then the professional texts the next professional and says, "Don't go on there." Good Lord,
it's a trap.
It's a trap. Admiral Akbar. Yeah.
No,
So,
typically I use an aerosol, kind of gun scrubber kind of thing.
Yeah, it's and fun fact. As I recall, gun scrubber and dechlorinated brake cleaner are damn near identical.
I seem to remember reading the labels, and they weren't, but I don't remember. I'd have to look at the labels.
I'll defer to the expert. I'm okay. Yeah, sure. Call me an asshole on the podcast. I'm cool with that.
No, I don't know. I what I'm saying.
You're an asshole.
Hang on a minute.
Okay, he's gonna go get proof, folks.
Pissed off the scientist.
No, I'm okay with this. Hey, this is how we all learn together. The funny thing is that Ash is the kind of guy that's got both dechlorinated brake cleaner and gun scrubber.
Let's see if I can see it, because my eyes suck now because I'm old.
It's the nuclear power plants.
It's got to be it. Shit, I can't see anything.
It says TJ is wrong.
It wouldn't be the first time. And if it's a product made by my wife or any of my other family members, that's exactly what that label says.
It's really funny that he was able to get up and put both those two things in his hands that quickly.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. That's something. Sorry, the can doesn't say what's in there. The difference, like contact cleaner's different. There tends to be some subtle differences into what's in them, and oftentimes, they're similar or whatever. But I hesitate to think that they're exactly the same. I really doubt it. So they're not saying. So we'll have to look up the. You want me to do it right now? I'll do it right now.
Yeah, we got the time if you've got the time.
SDS for.
So this would officially dispel potentially an old wives' tale, because I am going purely off of listening to my elders when I was like, hey, there's this can of gun scrubber, and I used it and it worked really, really well, and I realized it was $20 a can and it goes in like 5 minutes. And then the old timer at the gun store that I had come to respect, he was an old first sergeant. I was scared of him. He was like, son, why the hell are you throwing away $15? You go spend $5 on a can of dechlorinated gun scrubber or brake cleaner. It's the same shit. He could be completely wrong, but that was good enough for me.
Rodney White. Rodney White just won the internet. He says, I'm hourly, ... You have a point, Rodney. Oh, God.
Okay, so it's tetrachloroethylene in the CRC brake clean porch cleaner. Tetrachloroethylene, it says, okay, that's fine. So let me see now what.
There's somewhere in here, does this smell like chloroform joke?
Yeah, really?
While he's looking that up, the chloroform reminds me of a story of how I met my wife. So.
Oh, my God. So, TJ, I have a question for you.
Oh, God, help me.
No. That's an honest question. What did you guys use in the military?
So we used what is called CLP.
Okay.
So cleaner, lubricant, and protectant. What that shit is actually made of, and if it is, in fact, what he's about to hold up is the same thing, I have no idea. This might harken back. Yeah, I got it. I got a can of that shit in my garage too. But for the life of me, I don't think it's the same shit.
It's not. It smells different.
Yeah, it smells different, right? So I don't know if Breakthrough Clean is capitalizing on a well-known acronym for a generic cleaner, lubricant, and protectant that the military uses, right?
You're forgetting a well-known additive called Murica. There's a little drop of Murica in every bottle.
All my drill sergeants, every time they hosed our guns down with these things, they did it in like the dollar store little spray bottles that you would get. There wasn't a label to it at all.
Right.
So I have no way of knowing Now, it acts very much. It does do a good job of breaking up the carbon. It certainly does what the name implies.
Oh yeah.
But whether or not the branded CLP cleaner from Breakthrough Clean and U.S. government issue CLP are one and the same, I don't know. But that is what we used, and we use that shit for everything: cleaner, lubricant, and protectant. It was our solvent to help break up all the corrosion and the carbon buildup and all that stuff. Lubricant and preventative or protectant. Excuse me.
So it's like hot sauce. You put that shit on everything.
Yeah, it might as well have been.
You interestingly enough, the Canadians use CLPE. Did you know that?
CLPA.
Yeah, good job.
Oh God, it's your dad jokes, man. You don't have to be Miss Cleo to see those coming.
I just, it is what it is. So I have another question for Ashton once he's done looking up the answers.
For some reason, Birchwood Casey is not helping me. It says this product. Okay, so the gun scrubber says this product can expose you to chemicals including hexane, which is known to the state of California to cause birth defects and other effects.
In the state of California, air causes birth defects.
Yeah, no shit.
This is likely. All right, I'm having trouble pulling up the SDS from them because there's a link that says SDS, and I click on it, and it takes me to a stuff for sale page. So
yeah, that's fine.
Well.
That's fine. So we'll hold you to that, though. We'll continue. We will do the due diligence and justice to our viewers and listeners. We will certainly research this further, and we will dispel or confirm or deny the comments that I've made or what I've been led or misled to believe.
You're wrong. It's fine.
I mean, I'm probably wrong. I could be right.
No, you're not.
But I'm
Ashton's
still
right.
wrong.
No, you're wrong. It's fine. So, Ash.
I'm not saying that I know. I'm saying I didn't think. There's a big difference. I'm not stating if I knew it, I'd tell you I'd know it. But I
right. This is way more. This is way more fun to use as a bat to be. Okay. Yeah, this is way more fun. No, nobody's actually emotionally invested in this. It's Fair just enough. Anytime I get an opportunity to fuck with TJ, I take it. So, have you ever put stuff in an ultrasonic cleaner and poured the wrong ultrasonic cleaner shit in there and fucked it all up like me?
No, I have not.
Okay. So, what's the deal with ultrasonic cleaner? And there's certain stuff for brass and there's certain stuff for other metal and there's this and there's that.
I'm not your guy. No,
okay, fair.
I don't have any specific information on that.
All right. Just one of those things that I've fucked up along my firearms career. I was told that
it is the same.
Oh.
It's trichloroethylene.
God damn it.
It is the same.
I'm right?
God fucking do you have any idea?
It's not. It's not the same.
Yes.
God
Thank
damn
you.
it.
This is tetrachloroethylene, which is percoethylene. And this is it's not the same word, but it sounds close. So I'll have to ask somebody that knows more. I'm not
with my emotions this way, Ash.
No, it's not the same. It's close, but I don't think it's the same. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to ask my PhD chemistry dude tomorrow what the difference between these two things are and if there's any real difference, because they may be the same and they may be different. So
TJ can't be right twice in a week or the coronavirus goes on for another month. That's how that shit goes. So my final follow-up to you is, what do you explain? Like, I'm sure you've got a little 5-minute or 2-minute thing that you explain to your students about cleaning and weapons lubrication. What are the high points that you want to pass on to somebody that's less knowledgeable?
Okay. When you clean your gun at the range. Don't clean your gun in your basement, because if you clean your gun in the basement, so this was one of those things where
he's fine. He's probably sneezing or something.
Okay, so this is one of those things that seems commonsensical to me, but sometimes people get really shocked about it. I would rather have a dirty gun that I just put some lube on that I got done shooting and stuck in a holster that I was going to bet my life on, than have a clean gun that I took apart in my basement and didn't test fire before I put it in my holster.
Okay.
So the best place to clean guns is either right before you go to the range or at the range, and you put it together and then you run it and make sure everything works. Make sure you didn't screw it up putting it back together. Make sure you didn't break something, whatever. Cleaning guns is it's not just cleaning guns, right? Cleaning guns is you're looking for wear, you're looking for broken parts.
Yes.
My experience has been I break parts on guns. I don't typically wear out parts on guns, right? So, I'm far more concerned about making sure my springs are not past their life cycle, making sure that my extractor is working, making sure my ejector is working, making sure all that stuff is good, not chipped, broken, twisted, whatever. And in the case of an AR, making sure the ears aren't broken off of your bolt and all that kind of jazz, the typical things that happen to guns. What I don't see a lot of is this gun's got 215,000 miles on it and it's worn out now. So the lubricating part for the guns is to keep it reliable and working, more so than to maximize its lifespan. The barrel is going to get shot out and you're going to throw it away far more likely than you're going to say, oh, look, this, due to a lack of lubrication, this barrel is now worn out where it locks up. That's I haven't seen that, right? I see barrels getting shot out and there's no rifling in them anymore. I see small parts breaking, and it's not very often that guns have enough wear on them, on the wear surfaces, such that they get loose, like the piston rings in an engine, or the valve seals on the heads of your whatever it is you're driving. Those things wear out due to they can last longer if there's less friction. Guns just run better if there's less friction. They tend to run a little longer, so on and so forth. So look at that's what one of the really, really smart things you're doing is checking to make sure all this stuff's in the right condition and your gun's in good working order whenever you're cleaning it. Lube it up and then shoot it and make sure it works. Put a few mags through it, make sure it works, and then now cleaning a gun in the basement, you put it together wrong. I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of anybody putting a spring in something backwards or missing the hook or whatever in various different firearms. That never happens, right? It happens all the time. People screw up all the time. So you don't want to do that to your carry gun and then say, okay, cool, I'm going to bet my life on this. I hope it works.
Right.
So that's a pretty significant thing. Don't be afraid to oil stuff. Don't be afraid to put oil on your gun. Typically, the worst thing that you see happen is you get oil on your clothes or oil on your hands. So don't put that much on. Let gravity be your friend, right? Don't let gravity drag oil down through the trigger and into where your hand goes and all that kind of stuff. Hey, but I can tell you, like, for competition, I lube the crap out of it, and like I said, I'll often get a spritz of a little splashback on my glasses in those first couple of rounds at a match or whatever, or at the beginning of a class or whatever. That'll happen. It's really not going to hurt you that much. Pat Rogers proved, pretty demonstrably with Filthy 14 that you can just keep adding lube to a gun and it'll keep working. And didn't clean it for way longer than anybody ever should have ran that gun.
Right.
So I'm like one generation of gun instructor dude past that. For those of us who've only heard of that, like, tangentially, third party, what exactly did he do to an AR? What happened?
In broad strokes, he had a rack gun that they basically did a test on to see how long they could get it to go by just adding more lube and not cleaning it. Okay. And it went a really, really long time. If you Google Filthy 14, you can read all about it. I don't have the entire story committed to memory. I don't want to be inaccurate about telling the story, but it's out. The write-ups are out there and easy to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And me, for one, just I was really happy to hear you mention that especially the part about it's part of the maintenance cycle, right? So we joked about it a little bit about how, the military, white glove inspection ready and all that other stuff. Guys, your guns are still going to run with some crud in them, okay? Like Ash is saying, if you're gonna clean them, take it apart, clean it, wipe it down, put it back together, fire a few test rounds, make sure everything's still in working order. You don't need to take it immediately back apart and clean it again just because you put 10, 20, 30 rounds through it.
Hell, that's silly.
Yeah, the AR-15 sitting on my back wall has been cleaned, I think, once or twice. And I've got well over 2,000 rounds to it already. I take it apart. I inspect it. I inspect all the major parts that can cause an AR-15 to fail. I wipe it down, put it back together, test fire, done. So look at it as part of a maintenance cycle. Don't get so wrapped around the axle about having that thing squeaky clean as it was the day you bought it. So excellent advice, Ash. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
see, I can be right about something.
Nope. Yeah, Rodney, I just looked up the same thing. So that's not as long ago as I thought it was, but 28K plus. ARFCOM has a thread that says it was 40K plus, but there's a lot of Ks on that rifle, I guess is the point. So that's pretty cool. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about because we're just so uneducated that we should have?
No, but there's one thing I think I forgot to mention.
Okay.
One of the here's the thing about grease is you can absolutely design a grease to do dang near almost, you can to do a lot of things, right? And there's, I'm not sitting here saying that grease is bad. I'm just saying it's different. And what do you get? The question is, what do you get? As opposed to, what are the pros and the cons for the grease versus what are the pros and cons for the oil? Like I said, with the oil, you can just keep adding it. You can just add a little bit here and there, keep going down the road. With grease, whenever it's time to change it, because it's now the stuff that gets in it stays there, right? When you can't just add more grease and expect it to push out dirty stuff, as you add more oil, the oil moves from a high pressure to a low pressure area. That's how fluids flow, right? So it carries stuff with it and kind of flushes a little bit mechanically and what have you. Where grease, whenever you want to service it at some sort of service interval, you have to take everything apart and remove all the old stuff and then put new stuff back on, right? So it's a bit of a different animal. You don't have to do that very often with oil. You can just keep adding oil for a significant number of rounds, on whatever it is you're using. And there's various products out there. And like I said, some are great, some are okay, some whatever. But the vast majority of the stuff is pretty decent. And like I said, it's chasing what's the best. You can drive yourself crazy worrying about that, or you can just buy something that's going to work pretty well and worry about stuff that's important.
I've got five or six different bottles of different things in my garage on that premise alone.
Which one's the best?
Yes.
Yeah, because they all work just about the same. You can't really tell, can you?
Yes. That's
okay.
Correct.
So they all pretty much work good enough for you.
No, honestly, you know what did it for me? The design of the applicator bottle.
That's important.
Because just like you, I care about where I put the oil, not and how easy it is to put there, rather than, okay, well, I know I need to get the oil here, but in order to get this bottle to apply it where I want it, I've got to spray it through the mag well, through the open ejection port, with doing a backflip. It's all sorts of crazy shit. And honestly, and for that reason, like, I've even invested in little syringes. So
Brown Health sells those little bottles with the syringe-like applicator.
Yeah, that's ultimately what I settled on. I have a brand that uses that right off the shelf, and that's so far has been my favorite application or applicator design.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
So it's just about the accuracy, getting it where you want to, and not getting it all over your hands and all over your grip and shit. That's really what it comes down to.
Yep.
But you're right. Like I picked up the Italian gun grease just because it had a lot of hype to it. I was like, oh, I wonder. And yeah, I see no real difference. I mean, it doesn't change the way the gun recoils. It doesn't make it shoot faster or flatter.
It doesn't make it more accurate?
No. And my
heard that
Nikes don't make me run faster. Imagine that.
That's crap. Well, that works until you're about 9.
Right? But they had really cool lights on them.
Yeah, and there's all kind of claims out there, right? And if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, that's another lesson in life.
Is your oil as quiet as the footsteps of a Navy SEAL? I'm sorry, I'm making a holster company joke and adding it to an oil claim.
Oh, God.
Those fuckers kill me, dude. I don't know. Any of this Navy SEAL shit's getting used to sell way too much stuff these days.
I mean, they need to be marketing hair gel and tanning oil.
Oh man,
if that's the case.
Oh man.
Well, I mean, no. There's nothing wrong with being a Navy SEAL, clearly, because they could all kick my ass.
I have firsthand knowledge that they deploy with that shit.
All right, yeah.
And I have friends in that community, and I reserve the right to screw with them all I can.
Yeah, go to Tennessee. I ain't talking no shit. I'm just saying, man, it kills me when gun companies over-market their product. Now this is oil. This is super duper G2 rippy fast ammo. This is anything that like there's a body of useful, resourceful knowledge over here. And this company's off in the distance, shouting from the rooftops that their thing is the thing that does the thing that nobody else's thing does. That's probably a good clue that it's fucking shenanigans right there. That's just my whole when you bring the phlebotomist or however I couldn't spell that word for $1 million in a cheeseburger right now, but you bring the oil expert on here and his basic summary is probably all works pretty good. Just don't get on the outside edges of stupid shit. And then you have a company that's just ours, blah, 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 blah. It increases accuracy and lubricity and viscosity, and they throw all these big terms at you. Like, guys,
it's a gun lubricant. I'm not running NASCAR.
Yeah. And just, most of them, they promote their products with some free samples that come with the gun that you bought. Like SIG's big on this, right? Okay, cool. That's nice, and maybe I'll buy a bottle of that stuff next time. But I don't know. No, it was nice to get in the weeds though, because I learned a lot of shit tonight that I truly did not know before, and that happens to me every time I ask questions. So thank God for that.
Oh, absolutely. But with that, Ash, we do have all of the links to your social media and your website in the description down below. But in closing, why don't you go ahead and tell the folks listening what you got going on, what's coming up, how are things going for you, and what they can all look forward to.
Oh, yeah. Well, what is it? May 29th?
May
29th. That's assuming we're over the Rona. May 29th, I'll be out there in Lewisberry, Pennsylvania with a 2-day shotgun class. I've got a private class, sort of semi-private class going in July in Indiana. And then I was not prepared for this at all. I forgot I was supposed to do this blatant self-promotion thing at the end. But I've got Shotgun 360 coming up this summer. Of course, that's our annual homage to pushing the shotgun as hard as we can push it. And then I've got Pistol Performance, 2 days down at FPF in Culpeper, Virginia in November. And in June up here in Pennsylvania, I've got on the same weekend, I've got a 1-day concealed carry pistol class, which is not your standard, this is the class you take to go get your permit kind of class. This is like, if you have 1 day and you want to learn, and if you only have 1 day and you want to learn as much as you possibly can about the foundational stuff of why you carry, where you carry, how you carry, and for whom you're carrying. That's the class. And then the following day on that Sunday is going to be defensive pistol skills, which is a much more shooting intensive class.
Awesome. I look forward to that class in May. I'm really hoping it goes down because I'm coming.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hope
so
too.
I took your advice, and because I didn't have a pump gun that I was willing to run in the class. All I had was one that my dad gave me, and that's not really one that I would want to take out to the range for a day like that. So I found an old police trade-in Remington 870.
Nice.
And we're gonna run the wheels off that sumbitch.
Nice.
So, yeah, man, it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be straight up hootenanny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Hillbilly Deluxe, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So nice. Awesome, man. Kent, what you got going on, brother?
Okay. April 25 and 26 at Pine Grove is canceled because of the Rona. You have all been refunded. Man, what can I do? May 9 and 10, we've got Jedi up here for 2-day Red Dot Awesome Pistol-y thing class in Lewisberry. That is still a go as long as we're not, Rona shutdown. I've got May the 23rd and 24th at Pine Grove myself for CCW Essentials. That is my essential list of skills you need to acquire or learn to practice in order to be a proficient concealed carrier. No, it is not a permit-based concealed carry class. This is what I think you actually should be able to do with a handgun in order to carry it in public. Then we've got Mr. Ashton coming up for the 30th and 31st of May, or 29th and 30th, whatever that last weekend of May is, for Shotgun 360.
No.
And
Performance Shotgun.
Performance Shotgun from 360 performs with the shotguns. All I know is there's some circles and some shotgun shells, and we're gonna point some shit that way. And yes, it's gonna be fine. I've fucked that up more times. I'm like the worst concert promoter. I'm over here like, we got Peachy's, Bailey, and Circus Barnum coming, and they're like, it's Barnum and Bailey, motherfucker. Get it right. I'm sorry.
And the Pointer Sisters.
Yeah, really. And then we've got at least one class in Pine Grove for the rest of the summer, June, July, August, et cetera, et cetera. SIG has canceled my 2-day Red Dot instructor class on me because Rona. So I will not be a SIG certified Red Dot instructor after all, at least not this year, because they're only teaching cops and cool kids and not civilians. What can you do? So other than that,
you can be a cool kid or a cop.
I can be neither of those things because I don't have the patience. I just be slapping a fool. It's just God bless you guys and girls that can do that job. I just Anywho, let's see what else. GreenMountainDefense.com/training if you want to sign up for any of that, and Instagram, YouTube, and the Facey space. I'm bored out of my goddamn mind during the Rona thing, so there's videos on all kinds of stuff coming. They're low quality cell phone videos that I'm throwing up real quick, but like if you want to see me shoot the IDPA 5x5 classifier and not totally dick it up, it's up there. Go check it out. It's cool stuff. Trying to help you learn. And other than that, buy some podcast merch, people. We've got t-shirts.
Yes, and more coming.
Yeah.
I do have a goal to sit down this weekend at some point and draw some more up. So I know we've got a couple in the works. Sadly, Combat Corgi and Magstiff are going to be a little bit more tricky than I expected them to be.
They're going to be worth it, though.
I can't draw dogs for shit. So
just have it actually be like like those Walmart shirts with the wolves on them from back in the day?
Yeah, only kit them out in night vision goggles and...
Yeah,
I got it. Yeah. I can't do that yet. I'm working on it. So, although stick figure dogs, like one giant stick figure dog and then one little bitty stick figure dog for Combat Corgi and the Magstiff, I think that could work. Yes, and Anthony Paduano reminded me about the brass hole. That one's going to be interesting. So stay tuned for that. I do plan on doing that. But yes, please support the channel, support the podcast, go out and buy some merch. Let's see. Links, as always, are in the description down below. Kent at Green Mountain Defense. Ashton Ray with Performance 360. 360 Performs. This guy knows shotguns and lube, guys. Just go check him out. All his stuff is down below. Of course, we want to give a shout out to Right On Optics. Kent and I are both proud to be members of their pro staff. RightOnOptics.com. Go check out their brand new lineup for 2020. They actually just have the PRD with the RMR footprint that was just launched. So, yeah, go ahead.
3,000 round review on the PRD prototype on a 10 millimeter Glock coming up from me.
There you go, folks. So,
spoiler alert, it didn't break.
Imagine that.
No, that doesn't mean it's better than the RMR. No, that doesn't mean that I'm such a shill that I'm going to tell you it's the greatest pistol optic to ever live. But for a couple $100, it's a viable option, it seems like.
Certainly. I would say
Fair, right?
it's going to make our top count, right? I think it'll earn its place in the top bracket for our red dot, our pistol optics of choice. But yeah, so head on over.
It didn't break like the SIG did. Just saying.
He's right. I've been through 3 SIGs, guys.
Yeah.
3 SIGs. First one within the first 50 rounds before I left the gun store. Yeah.
But yeah, there's other good stuff, but this works.
So all kinds of good stuff, folks. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends. We will be hanging out again. We'll have another part 3 of the COVID-19 Friday night hangout session. So drinks in hand. Damn it, it's going to be a good time and a party all the way to Saturday. With that, Ashton, thank you again for being on the show. We love having you, brother. Looking forward to seeing you in May. We're going to keep our fingers crossed for that one because that's going to be a great time. And looking forward to it. So with that, folks, until we see each other again, God bless you all. Take care of each other. And until we see each other again, get out and